John Leguizamo played a villain in Violent Night,
Yes,
which we were just talking about. And now he's complaining that Latin men are overrepresented as villains in Hollywood. So I guess he can just never be satisfied.
He will never be happy.
Representation is never good enough. You can never satisfy someone like Leguizamo, who is just addicted to whining about representation. He says that they need to balance it out with more Latin heroes. And it's like, okay, when are you going to be satisfied? Is there some number
Is there an actual
that we
number?
can reach?
Yeah, there's a quote at the end here that it's not even from him, but it's from the person writing the article. And it says, every good hero needs an equally compelling villain, and there's plenty of room for actors like John Leguizamo or any performer of color to embody both sides of the coin. Pushing for more accurate representation on screen calls for actors of all sorts of colors to this color spectrum of cinema with brighter and more complicated hues. I want to know, it's this particular line. It says there's plenty of room for actors like John Leguizamo or performers of color to embody both sides of that coin, pushing for more accurate representation on screen. What does that mean? More accurate to what? I'm actually asking that question. More accurate to what?
I mean, they don't have an answer ultimately.
Because there isn't supposed to be an end goal.
Here's what Leguizamo said when he was asked if he felt having Latin villains was a step forward in representation. Let me try to put that in the proper filter, because unfortunately, being a Latin man, I've always played villains, and I was up to here with the villain thing. But because we don't have enough heroes, that's the problem. We need more Latin heroes so we can enjoy our Latin villains. The best roles written in the movies are always the villains, and I want to be able to play villains, but you've got to give me my Latin heroes to counterbalance that.
Oh, here's the thing.
It's all about demanding what we should give you, but you're supposed to be giving a product to the audiences.
Yeah. Also, some people are just meant to play villains. Not everyone can do both. In fact, I would argue that very few people do both very, very well. Denzel Washington can do both very, very well. Even Wesley Snipes did Blade and Simon Phoenix when he was in Demolition Man, but that's not necessarily the same thing. Blade is cool and he's an anti-hero. Not every actor has the ability to go back and forth between good guy and bad guy. Like when you really think about it, I'm trying to think of another actor who would be. How often is Keanu Reeves a bad guy?
Dude, can I tell you? I had kind of that experience myself when I was in high school. I was in like theater clubs and all that stuff, and every time I tried to do something dramatic, I just didn't have like the range of emotion. Yeah. Like I don't know, I just like couldn't pull it off. People would be like, "Are you kidding right now? Like you're really bad."
Maybe John Leguizamo just doesn't have what it takes.
Seriously, and I mean.
I also just watched the Menu over the weekend, where John Leguizamo plays a morally compromised, narcissistic actor who name drops for clout and attention and is self-indulgent. And it's like, is that not just who you are in real life? That's the lowest effort role I've ever seen him play.
I think people have a real issue nowadays of playing to their strengths. Like everyone just wants to be the super multi-talented, perfect little snowflake. And it's like, just be proud of what you are.
It does feel, well, actually, I was thinking about this recently. Like when you go into these industries, like it's never enough. You always have to be doing more. Like the beauty of being an actor, I think, like obviously I'm not an actor. I don't work in the field, but it might be nice to just not have to do anything other than just act. Like a lot of people who work in this space, content creators do dozens of different things. Like they don't just do their YouTube stuff. They do social media, they do Twitch, they do shows on YouTube. They're multi-talented and multifaceted because it's called a personality around who they are as a person, not around one specific ability that they have to offer.
Yeah, and you also, in that position, need to find this delicate balance between representing who you really are, your real style of speaking and your real opinions, but not giving the internet complete access to who you are as a person. And when you think about it, an actor or an actress has a much easier ask. Yeah. You play somebody who you are not.
I still think Denzel Washington is a fantastic example of somebody who does both.
I think he's a super plain leading man. Like
Denzel?
I personally don't like him. I think when his more villainous roles, he's much better. Like the charismatic, like psychopath.
Training Day. American Gangster is what, like, in my top 2 or 3 favorite movies of all time when he plays Frank Lucas, the drug kingpin.
He just shoots a guy.
Yeah, poor Idris Elba. Idris Elba can do both. Idris Elba is fairly good at it. He's really good, but even then, he's like, they're complicated characters. His character in Luther is not just a clear-cut good guy. He's an
anti-hero.
He's an anti. Like, I guess most of these examples I'm thinking of are anti-heroes. Chat, I do want to know, can you guys give me some examples of people that can play both? Shimmy Shelley says Tom Cruise. Yes, Tom Cruise plays mostly good guys. Tom Cruise plays mostly good guys, but in Collateral played a very villainous character. But I'm trying to think of some better examples. So if anybody else has anybody, send them in the chat here. But the other thing is, he calls Chris Pratt's casting backwards. That was extremely insulting to me.
He's mad that even a voice actor wouldn't be casted from his racial group. Well, that's insane. You're not even on camera.
Heath Ledger.
Casting in Hollywood is more diverse than it has ever been in history.
Almost to a fault, because they're casting people for their racial backgrounds rather than how they perform.
And it feels planned.
Yeah.
Like, and it all feels planned. It says, and playing a villain should not, like, it shouldn't have further implications. Like, he's saying it like they're typecasting them, right? They're just like, what are you talking about? It shouldn't have, when I see an evil, like, white businessman, or a stereotypical evil white businessman, or a stereotypical black gangbanger, I don't extrapolate that to mean something about an entire demographic of people. That's insane.
Right. But the fact that they assume you do says so much about how they view the audience.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, this, listening to people like John Leguizamo will be the downfall of Hollywood if they continue scrambling to appease them, because there is no benchmark for when they will be happy and satisfied with the representation you give them. It will never be enough. You're always doing it wrong. Over the weekend, I saw this video of Lady Gaga performing for one of the VMAs when she was like 23. And someone commented, "Why are all of the background dancers black? It's like they're accessories to her, and she doesn't even view them as people." And then someone commented, like, okay, if they were all white, you would be complaining that she didn't represent other backgrounds in her backup dancers. If most of them were white and some of them were black, you'd say she's tokenizing the black ones. Yeah. And if they were a mix of all different kinds, you would complain that she's not willing to commit to giving an all black cast in the background of her shows.
I feel like
it's like there will never be any satisfaction from these people because they are obsessed with being able to make the demands. They want to make the terms. Yep. They're tyrants.
The goal is anger. Like, the goal is being unhappy about things. The goal is never to get anything fixed. The goal is to be outraged in public and be like, aren't I great?
People who are unhappy with themselves who could never do what the people on screen are doing. Also.
Yeah, well, that's the like, who's it that gives that speech? He says like it's about like hats off to the people in the arena. Like, it's about, like, it's more important to applaud the people that actually make an effort and try to actually accomplish something, right? I applaud anyone who makes the effort to create art, right? So I feel bad for a lot of the... I do. Look, creating art is an extremely transformative experience for a lot of people, and it's an extremely hard thing to put out there for people to judge. I understand that. We put our opinions out there. This isn't necessarily what you'd call art, but we put our opinions out there every day to be judged by people that don't know who we are as human beings, don't know what we're like, and that requires you to be very, very open in a way. So it is the same thing if your art is extremely personal to you and you create something, it takes a lot of courage to put it out there for everyone to judge. Now, it's a little bit different at the studio level when it's so corporatized. Calling it art is hardly, there's beauty behind a lot of the process, but that doesn't necessarily make it high art. But for me, like, first of all races should be able to play villains and heroes equally. But certain people are just going to be good at one or the other. Not everyone will have that ability to do both.
And John Leguizamo is not even exceptional at playing villains anyway. I don't even think he's an exceptional actor in general.
I mean, I liked him in Violent Night, but I thought he was just fine.
But he's totally overcompensating for his shortcomings.
Yeah. Also,
by making this about representation.
Do they also set themselves back by like talking about this. Like it's harder.
Yeah,
it's harder for us to judge indiscriminately when you have these opinions in the back of your mind. I've actually gotten much better at that since we started doing this show, like at not letting their opinions on Twitter or in interviews color my opinion of them on screen. But
his outspokenness definitely detracts from our view of his nobility as a performer, I guess. Like, it's something that you've pointed out before in relation to Margot Robbie, is that she has this air of showmanship, statesmanship, maybe, that she just doesn't blabber about all of this crap that doesn't matter, that people don't want to hear about. They want to hear about the movie. They like her for her personality and who she is. And she would have so many opportunities. In fact, she is led to make comments on these social issues. And she doesn't because she's smart. She's strategic.
It's funny. I actually saw something from her, like an infographic. Like I follow a couple of these accounts that like they're quotes from actors. And she makes this one basically talking about how she's like, yeah, sure. I like the art of it, but eventually you have to accept that it's a business.
Yeah.
I have a feeling she is secretly quite based.
She's like, super pragmatic at least.
Like she's very much she's a
hot Russian chick.
She's a very, very...
Is she Russian?
Isn't she?
She's Australian.
Yeah.
She's a very, very calculated businesswoman that's good at her job. I respect that.
Yeah. And if she were out here doing interviews talking about how Barbie is going to change the conversation about how women use their sex appeal to their empowerment, and I mean, there are so many angles she could take, but it would cheapen who she is as a performer and what she's capable of. It would cheapen her name in the box office.
But some of the best endeavors in anything, in technology, in art, in anything, is when people are self-aware, they realize who they are, and they realize the people that they need to complement them. It's, for example, it could be like a person who is short-tempered but has the artistic creativity. It like matches with a person that's very organized and key-tempered and, you know, doesn't get like flustered easily. Like those two people can usually cooperate together. But if you get what seems to be is like everyone is on their super narcissistic trip, where it's like, oh, it should be everything all at once. That doesn't work.
I've got a couple of funny examples.
Someone's the main character.
I've got a couple of funny examples. So in the show Castle, there's two side characters that are played by Seamus Dever and John Huertas. And John Huertas and Seamus Dever have both played, at least to me, not memorable, but funny roles where they play like really bad guys in other shows. John Huertas, right after Castle went off the air, where he plays like a kind of quirky detective, played like a Latino gangster, like the head of a cartel with full of face tattoos, and like disappeared into the role. But it took about 5 scenes. He did that in the show Elementary, and it took a while to not see the detective that he played before. But because he isn't annoying and talking about this stuff as if it's like the biggest deal in the world, it's easier for me to lose myself in a new character because I'm not being distracted. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, here, this is the stuff he said about Pratt bothers me because it very is clearly full of entitlement. It
says jealousy.
Yeah, just as Super Mario Brothers directors fought to cast Leguizamo as Luigi, that same sort of energy is needed in the current climate of movie making. It's already there. To say it's not is highly disingenuous. That's exactly why Leguizamo also spoke out about Chris Pratt's casting in the Super Mario Brothers movie, a move that he called backwards when it came to its very execution. I've said this before, I'll say it again. When they swap the race of a character, there is no going back. It only goes in one direction until you end up at a handicapped trans person. I don't mean to be rude, but that's what it only goes one direction. You don't get to have it start as a straight white dude and have it end somewhere else and then go back. To them, it never goes back. It has to stay that way. So the idea is like when they changed to Jodie Whittaker, right? They went back to David Tennant as the Doctor, but only temporarily. It will never go back likely to a straight white doctor again.
Yeah, and going back to David Tennant was totally damage control for the fact that like no one likes this show anymore. Yeah. So you ruined it.
So like they're already talking about like if they change the race of James Bond. I've made this joke before. I was like, I think it's the big ask. Everyone's like, maybe we should cast a trans woman to play James Bond. I'm like, that's so that when they cast somebody that's just another race, they'll be like, oh, that's fine. And like I said, everyone knows that I'm here. Nobody cares. Like, I'm actually the person here who doesn't care about that stuff as much as anyone else. But it doesn't mean I don't know what they're doing. Like, we know
it's to desensitize you to their encroachment upon the characters that you love and know.
That you remember the way they were.
And the ultimate goal of representation is to eliminate the straight, cis, I hate that word, white male from being on screen. It's to erase the existence of that very person with those traits. But it's
they always
not
get
to
one
elevate
girl.
any other group.
They always get like one girl in a Halloween costume. It's like everything, literally everything is for this.
Yeah.
One girl in a Halloween costume, the purpose of my existence. It's like, okay, well.
So it's just, it's like, this is, I feel bad for the people. Like, we kind of have to do it because it's work. But imagine having to live life with like this battlefield as like your hill to die on every day.
I hope that
it's really lame.
I hope that John Leguizamo and his ilk, for their own sake, learn how pathetic they look when they try to power trip about representation, because they would be much better off in their careers and just like in their mindsets if they were appreciated for what they're capable of on screen and not in interviews.
Arguably, I don't want to care about the actor at all. I want to care about the characters he's portrayed. Like, I don't want to think, maybe that's just a hint of the narcissism, right? They want the credit. It's like, I want to know that you did a good job at that role. I don't need to know who you are.
No amount of money is good enough. No amount of awards are good enough. These people are pathological.
I mean, that industry attracts those people, though. Like, narcissistic people are attracted to acting.
But they haven't always been as indulged by the media as they are now.
If anything, they were more adversarial before.
Yeah,
they all had Twitter. Yeah. They didn't have Twitter. Now they can be this guy.
Think of Tony Todd as the Candyman from Candyman, but also as like my favorite example is he plays like this kind of not annoying. He's a very statesman-like like CIA officer in the show Chuck, and it's just two totally different characters. And then he also voices bad guys all the time. It's just, you can play both, but Hollywood nor does society owe anyone anything. Are we supposed to be like, old white guys shouldn't play evil CEO villains anymore? That doesn't make any sense, because it actually does make sense for them to play that character. Mm-hmm. You don't just stop doing that. Plus, people want to play those roles anyway, because like he says in the interview, it's cooler to play the villain. Everyone knows
they're more
that.
remembered.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.